All right, peeps. So Super Bowl weekend has finally come upon us. It seems like the damn championship games was a month ago with how slow the time is moving, but we're finally here, a couple days away, man. Got Chiefs, Eagles, obviously not necessarily the matchup everybody wanted to see, but it's the matchup we got, right? And it is a great matchup, obviously, right? If we don't have any outside sources interfering too much, I think it's obviously a great matchup on paper. So let's get into it, man. I wrote down a couple of my key factors here, right, in some of these position groups and some of the smaller battles that are going to go on in this game, right? So the biggest matchup for sure is the offensive line versus the D line, right, on both sides of the ball, right? So you got the Chiefs. They've allowed 36 sacks this season. The Eagles, not a big sack team, right? But they've been heating up a little bit more, getting pressure on the quarterback throughout the playoffs, right? So they're getting a little hot, this D-line is, but we know that they're stout in the run game as well. And they do get pressure, right? They tend to kind of get pressure, create turnovers. They're kind of that sort of team defensively. Stuff the run, get pressure, and then, if they don't get the sack, they usually do, come out with the turnover. If they don't get the turnover, they usually get a sudden change though, right? Just as far as, getting off the field on third down, maybe getting an interception, things of that nature, right? So definitely a big play defense, I would say. Obviously I've been talking about this throughout the playoffs, is that it's a defense that can take over the game, right? So when you got that kind of defense that can legitimately shut a team down and then you're running the ball like you are, it's always great results. So like I said, they had 10 sacks in the playoffs here so far, right? The Eagles did. But one thing I was looking at, though, is that, like I said, the Eagles are a great defense. They don't really give up big plays, right? But one thing you notice about the Chiefs in that same scenario is that, they're not really a big play offense this season, right? I was looking at a few different statistics. I know the Chiefs have had only a few games where they scored over 30 points this season, right? But they won those games. The Eagles have kind of been on the same kind of trend. Not very good offensively. They're not putting up very many stats. You don't see those, 300-400 yard games from Pat Mahomes this season. But like I say, they're finding ways to win games. A lot of it has to do with how they're playing defense this season. And so you got to take that into account. This is probably going to go closer to that under, like the last Super Bowl matchup that they had. Both of these defenses are playing great. We know Spagnuolo as a coordinator is great. And that was another one too, right? So Vic Fangio is a defensive coordinator for the Eagles. He's actually 0-7 versus Pat Mahomes in his entire career. I think this goes back to the Denver Broncos as well, right? So very familiar. We know Pat is one of those guys that you always hear he has like a photographic memory, doesn't forget shit, right? So that's another interesting topic to look at here as well, right? That kind of history between those two. And maybe it's like one of those grudge matches, right? To where Fangio finally gets the formula correct. Now I got the perfect game plan for this motherfucker. We gonna get him up out of here today, right? So I'd like to see what's going on there as well, which kind of leads me into my next phase, which was the quarterback comparison. And I think just here, I would just want to know if Jalen Hurts is 100% healthy. Okay, I'll say it like this, right? Like maybe that's what's been going on all this season, right? Like while we haven't seen damn near anything in the past game from the Eagles, maybe Jalen Hurts isn't 100%. Maybe it's one of those things like, hey, man, if we can win handing you the ball 30 times and you just, go get 200 yards a game or whatever the hell Saquon does, fuck it. You know what I mean? Like we're winning like that. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So one of those kind of things. But I think this is finally the game where someone makes Jalen Hurts put the game in his hands. If you don't see Jalen Hurts over like 250 passing yards, I don't think they have a chance to win this game. Unless, obviously, like I say, the outlier in here is that we've seen that Saquon Barkley will literally rush for 150, 200 yards at any given moment, right? I think it all just kind of depends on how this offensive line is playing today. I think they've been very consistent in the playoffs. I'll say that. In the second half of the season into the playoffs, they've definitely been on a roll, moving guys, right? Now, can they keep that going? right? We know Chris Jones, we know Karlaftis, those aren't slouches on that Chiefs defensive front, right? So they're going to have to move those guys as well and try to get that run game established for sure, right? Now, if they're unable to, like I say, they have the weapons to go ahead and throw 30 balls and still win the football game, right? And just playing defense. So, I think it's one of those things to where you're not really worried about it if you're Sirianni, but if you get into that first quarter and, kind of like they did in the championship game, right? They got Jalen Hurts going, ran some pass plays on the first drive that they had, their first one, Saquon scored on the first play. And then the second drive was more of a drive, right? And so you saw him come out and try to establish Jalen Hurts, get some passes going, things of that nature. So I expect to see that again versus the Chiefs on Sunday for sure, just because, like I say, they may need him. Right. And so, you hear that all the time from basketball guys, right? Like, hey, I ain't shot a ball all game. You just going to throw the shit to me in the clutch. That ain't going to work. Right. So we got to get a rhythm going for Jalen Hurts for sure so that we can, like I say, if we have to depend on him late in the game, if Saquon isn't doing it like he usually does it, breaking for 4, 5, 6 a carry, then we may have to throw that ball. But like I say, they have the guys to do that. Right. And so I think a lot of it is just come down to Jalen Hurts at the end of the day. Right. And so can he have a good game? Right. He's going to have to be on point. I know that he doesn't have a problem with, focus and things of that nature. I just wonder at this point, is he 100%? All right. So we'll check on that. All right. Now, speaking of this Eagles pass game, right, I have some things here about these DBs. Right. And so one of the major points that I figured in this situation is that now, the Chiefs lead the league in passes behind the line of scrimmage, right? They throw a lot of RPOs, a lot of screens. You got Xavier Worthy. They try to get him in space a lot. They try to get Kelsey in space from time to time. Things like that, right? They throw it to the back a lot. Those kind of plays that Andy Reid loves to run. The Eagles are number 1 in the league defensively on defending those kind of passes behind the line of scrimmage, right? So I want to see that game within the game, right? One of those things that Andy Reid loves to do. Can the Eagles kind of take that away and make them do something else, right? Because now you're talking about having to depend on Kareem Hunt in that run game, right? As far as, some of those just getting established, right? You can't just drop back and throw the shit down the field every play, right? You got to kind of take some chunks by chunks. And like we talked about earlier with this Eagles defense, you're definitely going to have to put some drives together, right? They're not the kind of team that gives you those big plays, right? So how do the Chiefs go about that? Methodically moving the ball down the field, right? They've looked decent in the run game. Kareem Hunt's probably got, some hunger as far as being in the playoffs and wanting to get another ring, and all the kind of things that you can kind of point to mentally, I would say, right? Like, the Chiefs took a chance on me, brought me back in, all the things that happened in Kareem's career. He was the goddamn led the league in rushing his rookie season, right? So it's not like he's a bum, but just a few things that happened throughout the time, people kind of forgot who he was, right? So I think that may play a factor as well, right? We may see a rookie year Kareem Hunt on Sunday as well, and that can definitely put the game kind of over the top, I would think, for the Chiefs, because again, like I say, a lot of the short yardage things that they do is getting Xavier Worthy a screen. He'll get, 7, 8 just off of speed, right? And so, same thing with Kelsey, right? He'll just use his size and get some of those 3-4 yard gains on third downs, what have you, right? And so, same with the backs. They'll hit those guys. You saw the game clinching play in the championship game. He threw it out there to the back on a little wheel route up the sideline, right? So we know that that's in the arsenal. We know that that's something that Andy Reid likes to do a lot. But again, can the Eagles take that away and kind of make them establish that run game, which is very, very tough to do against his Eagles defensive front, right? So that'll definitely be interesting. Now, coaching-wise, obviously we know who Big Red is. Sirianni's been to 2 Super Bowls in his first 4 seasons, right? That's nothing to scoff at. I think he's definitely had great rosters to do that with, but we've seen, some of the coaching decisions that he's made that have got him to this point, right? So, I think kind of like Gilly said, right? Just be yourself. If you feel like taking those risks, Sirianni, go ahead and do that. But again, I think in his case, I think it's one of those situations to where, like I said, we almost have to kind of establish the run and the pass at the same time, it feels like, right? Like you can establish Saquon early, and just let niggas know, like, okay, yeah, like this is going to be regular Saquon today, 5-6 yards of carry. Let's do it. Right. But obviously, you may get to these points to where they kind of shut them down. Right. And you got to throw the ball. So that's kind of why I say it needs to be a little more like the championship game, to where those first few drives we're really throwing more than getting Saquon the ball, because in my mind, it's like, Saquon can really break for 60 at any point in the game. Okay, and go score a touchdown. When it comes to this pass game, it just feels like they have to kind of bring Jalen Hurts along, get him into the game early, some screens, some slants, things of that nature, and then we can kind of start play action, going deep, throwing it up to A.J. Brown, stuff like that, right? That's just kind of what this pass game feels like to me in Philly. So I think they'll kind of have to gradually step that up throughout the game while sprinkling some Saquon in there. I think he's going to have to start with Jalen Hurts and end with Saquon Barkley for them to win this football game. Because I just feel like if you're, I've seen a lot of different opinions about the game, and I think if you're in a situation in the fourth quarter where it's close, in my opinion, at this point right now, and just from what I've seen the Eagles do, right, I would much rather have the ball and say, like, I'm gonna trust Saquon Barkley to go make a play. At this point in this season, from how the offenses looked, I'm gonna trust Saquon Barkley to go make a play in the fourth quarter before I trust my quarterback right now. And I don't necessarily think that's a good thing, but I think that that's where the Eagles are at right now, right? And so again, if you're unable to establish that pass game, that's what it's going to be, right? But again, and this is kind of why I was bringing up Sirianni, and just, mentally it's like, okay, well, I know we can do both though. Why? Because we got the best O-line in the goddamn league, right? You can do kind of what you want to do. When you got those kind of guys up front, you can do what the hell you want to do, right? Now, again though, like I say, with the consistency with the offensive line of the Eagles, if they're not moving guys and mauling people like they usually do, it's a totally different story, right? And then again, you get to this fourth quarter, you're not the same. You're not moving people the same as you was in the first quarter. You get what I'm saying? So that's not the best place to be either, depending on Saquon, right? So again, this is why I say Jalen Hurts is definitely the most important player on the field in this game, right? If he's not playing at his best, cancel that shit. Period. Because again, even if Saquon is going off all night, when you get to that fourth quarter and the game is still close and you're having to depend on the run game as opposed to being able to get chunks in the pass game, it's going to be an issue. Especially the way that Spagnuolo likes to call plays, these clutch blitzes and things like that. He's going to make you pay somewhere toward the end of that game, right? So definitely an interesting matchup on both sides. Can't wait for it. Another great Super Bowl. Again, man, like I say, I expect a great game. On paper, it should be a great game, bar none. We've heard a whole lot, way more than usual about these referees and some of the calls that the Chiefs has gotten. I see him fucking with Travis Kelce. I see him fucking with Patrick Mahomes at the media day. So, at this point, it's like just pray for a clean game, right? Like a clean, even game. Please don't give me no bullshit calls. Please do not give nobody no 4th and 1 that didn't get it, or take the 4th and 1 away that they clearly got. And, just those kind of game ruining calls, just keep those out the way, Vegas, and we'll be cool, man. Just do it how you used to do it for the Patriots, right? Like sneak a call in the first quarter, sneak a call in here in the third, make it look good at least, okay? That's all I'm asking, bro. Shouts out to Kendrick Lamar, too. Surgeon Sports, man.
Surgeon Sports Network.